victory? Thanks. Because if he's not going to win, he's going to lose his kingship. He's the greatest of all men. We said Netzach only comes with a big man. Whoever's bigger is going to have more of a power to bring out his will and his desire, thank you so much, over others. So we said it gets to the point that he'll even put his life on the line. What are you laughing at, Yaakov?
What's in Hada?
He'll even put his life on the line. Meaning to say that not only will he empty out all the treasure houses of wealth that's been stacked up and established for generations and so forth, none of it means anything so long as he's going to lose his kingdom, but even he'll give his life because the ideology that he's fighting for is something which is even more precious than his actual most precious possession, which is his body itself. Okay, so we'll take it from inside. We're going to start from page 132. The line starts about 8 lines up from the bottom of the first paragraph. Otzro Sav, Tainuge Malachim. And he says, Da Seder Bazehu. Right? That the Seder of it is, the Be'ez Milchama, when it comes to the time of war, Post Chines HaOtzros, you open up all the treasure house, the storehouses of treasure, V'nosni Nosam, Al Yidei Sarya Apkidim, and you give them through the sort of generals, Shem Pekidi Achayel, which are where do you give all the money to? In other words, what's the Seder? Okay, he's ready to waste all his money and spend everything he's got for the war. How does it work? Practically speaking, he's going to give, the budget goes to the hands of the generals. Right? They are overseeing the simple soldier. In other words, you don't give the nuclear weapons and the planes and the tanks and all the expensive things. You don't give them right away to the
new president.
You don't give them to the soldiers right away, right? First, they go to the generals. They're the ones that get the information. They get all this wealth. We're going to see this is an analogy for something, obviously. They get all this wealth first, but the kavana bazeh, the real intention, hem anshe achayil, is that they should really go, ultimately, you're going to put the plane into the hands of a simple person, some pilot, right? It's just that, lachatchila, you have to start off training them and so forth, so the generals get them and they decide to disperse them to where they please. And why does it eventually go to the hands of the simple soldier? Shehem dafka osim esanitzach. They're the ones that are going to go win the war, right? Okay, you have once in a while a general make his way out to the battlefield, but essentially it's the simple people, the simple soldiers that make their way out and actually are the ones that win the war. And he says, "Va'dugma mizel yuvan lamayla." The example of this can be understood above. It's all this about the netzach and the victory and giving the arms and the power and the wealth to the simple people through the generals. It's all an analogy. The yeshno gam kim bechinas otzar. Above, you also have something called this treasure house of wealth, right? And the king of all kings, God Almighty, He's willing to waste and dispense of His treasure house of wealth in order to win His war. This is what's hidden and concealed. That basically we're going to just lay it out there. It's called the panemius of the Torah, right? The secrets of the Torah that have been sealed away and never shown to anybody for thousands of years, like Hashem's inner, delights. As it says, Hashem will open for you His good treasure house. Right? There's psukim that speak about this opening of the treasure house. And we ask, your treasure house of goodness, please open it for us. In Psukim, elsewhere it says, from your treasure house, grace us with a free gift. So we find there is such a thing called Hashem's treasure house. And what are they? They're the hidden, sealed treasures. Right? Which you can only imagine what that means as far as God is concerned. But at the time of war, He's willing to open this treasure house. And who's He going to give it to? The generals. Who are the generals? The Rebbeim. Right? His people are conducting His war for Him over here. They're the ones who are masters over the simple soldiers. But He's only giving it to the Rebbeim because He wants it to get to the Hasidim. Because they're the ones that ultimately have to win the war. Right? That's the first thing the Rebbe said. I'm not going to do it for you. Right? I'll be here to help. I'm going to give you all the chassidus you need. I'm going to print all the books. I'm going to sit in Fabring for hours and hand out dollars and give brachas. But I'm not doing this for you. Right? So the whole intention of all the secrets of the Torah, believe it or not, is for you. Mamish, for you to have these powerful nuclear weapons in the hands of a simple pilot, 18 years old. But really, you're the one that's going to have to win the war. The war is against your Yetzer Hara, if you didn't know.
But why wouldn't the Rebbe do it himself?
That's not the way that war works. You can't. One general is not going to win the whole war. And it's Tzivos Hashem. Remember, the whole flow of the Bible was talking about how the Jewish people, we get this title, Tzivos Hashem. We came out of Mitzrayim, and Tzivos Hashem was sort of like the title of victory. That we won God's war. Why? Because we made a Mishkan for Hashem down below. You can't make a Mishkan if one guy is making the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the idea. We said Tseva means three things. And one of them was a blend of all the different parts. It means beauty. Tzivayon means like an array of all different types. So every single person has to be taking their part in making this sort of like, in making the Mishkan, right? Just like when we make the Mishkan, every Jew had to bring their offering, and every Jew has a piece in the communal offerings. It's not a one-man operation. If the Rebbe would do it by himself, which he could theoretically, it would not bring about the desired effect of the real pleasure of Hashem. It's not the nachas ruach that Hashem is looking for. Why? You probably know this already, but it's kind of obvious. Hashem wants that the whole beauty is to turn the darkness into light. The Rebbe turning the darkness into light is not that the darkness itself gets turned to the light. It's like he waves a magic wand and the darkness disappears. The real darkness turning into light is that you have a piece of darkness that you have to turn into light. If someone takes it away from you and makes you all better without you doing the work, that's not called turning darkness into light. That's not called, therefore, making a mishkan, turning your animal into something holy. That's somebody else, just like nullifying your animal. So that does not access the special or soviv that we're discussing. It can't be done by anyone else. That's why there's this famous video. Someone comes to the Rebbe, some like lady, Jewish mama kind of thing, and she's like, Rebbe, it's enough already. I think she lost a child, something horrible, and she was like, reveal yourself already as Mashiach. It's enough. And she was like, she meant business. She came in there like with netzach, And the Rebbe Mamash got his netzach on. He was like, he was not having any of it. And he started like speaking loudly and with authority. He's like, no, you don't understand. It's when you'll bring out Mashiach. And he started pointing to all the people in the crowd. And you'll bring Mashiach. And you'll bring Mashiach. And he got like, Mamash, he was like very uncharacteristic. He's like, that's when Mashiach will come. You're not getting the point. It's Mamash intense. He doesn't want to do it for us. That's not, he can't do it for us. That's the one thing he can't do. Because the whole idea is that you have to do it yourself. That's what accesses the light. No one can do it for you.
But he had all the people,
He's the general. He gives us the nuclear weapons. We couldn't do it without him, that's for sure.
For sure.
Because why? The victory comes by giving the simple soldiers what they need, which is the warehouse and treasure house of infinite delights of Hashem in order to fight the battle. You can't send a person into a battle with his hands in his pockets and no weaponry, right? So he's the general that Hashem delivers all of the weaponry to, which is Pashat Chasidis, Pnimius Torah. Like he said, I'll be happy to sit and give over my marim. I'll be happy to print the books. I'll be happy to sit in Fabring, give blessings. I'll do my job. You got everything you need, but go fight the war.
Did he know that it wasn't just going to happen in his lifetime?
He's a prophet, and he said that it's going to be in his reign, which is we're still currently in. This is the first thing he said. Basi Legani, 1951. Welcome to the seventh generation. That's us. That's me, right? And just like Avraham was the first, and Moshe was the seventh, and Moshe brought the Shekhinah down to the earth, we are going to bring the Shekhinah down to earth. He said, you might not think that you're worthy, and maybe you're not. He said, you might not think that you might not even want to be here, because it's going to be a pretty tumultuous generation. But we're the seventh, and all sevenths are beloved, and this is the generation of Geula. Take it. So we have not won the war just yet. We have not won the war just yet. We haven't just yet brought the what do you call it, to Jerusalem?
Is this last chance for tshuva?
What do you call that?
Embassy.
The embassy, right? We're still wavering. I don't know. There's two sides.
Two sides.
Is this also like the last call? Is this the last call for tshuva, mitzvot, and gilgulim?
Of course, it's the last call. Yeah. I don't know. Someone told me recently. I don't know. I didn't see it anywhere. This is your last gilgul. In other words, do it. Yeah, you got to make it happen right now. This is it. We're like at the end of the, and it makes sense. I mean, because I don't know. Like I said, I didn't. Someone told me that. Someone that they told me it seemed like a reasonable source, or I wouldn't have repeated it. But he said basically that it makes sense. And it was, what else are you doing? This is it. The Rebbe says this is the final time. Make it happen right now. You have to win the war. There's no time for. Mashiach comes. Mashiach comes. In other words, when it's over, it's over. The Rebbe said Mashiach is already here. In other words, we're in the days of Mashiach, and the war is upon us. Mashiach is fighting the battle right now. We're his soldiers. So in other words, do your best. This is the final battle, you know? And what is your weaponry? Again, you're fighting against your Yetzer Hara. You're fighting to overcome your shortcomings. You're fighting to spread Chassidus. You're fighting to bring the light of Kedusha into the world. And you can see that, Mamish, there's a heavy-duty fight going on. This is it. It's the final battle.
But isn't this it regardless? 6,000 is it?
So you've been wanting to ask something for a while there. Say it again.
Like in the process of overcoming the Nefesh Ba'ama, the godly soul.
Did I make a blessing on this already? Roll the tape.
Evolves and adapts. Like it becomes something greater than it was before. Like it has to. If it didn't have to overcome the Nefesh Ba'ama, it would never have the opportunity to evolve and adapt into like a greater soul. Like it.
That's exactly right.
If somebody just took it away, you'd be like cheating them.
100%.
They would never have the chance to grow.
Yeah, they wouldn't have. That's what we said yesterday. You were here. But you can only bring out your nitzachon, which is this intense power, when you have an opponent. So everybody's going to just take away your opponent. You're not going to achieve. So he just gave you enough resistance, enough power, enough force that you have no excuses. You're not lacking anything, that you don't have the weaponry to take out this opponent. That's what he provided. The king has opened up the treasure house. The general has distributed it into your hands. There's no excuses. You can win this war. You just have to do it.
The Rebbe sounds like a general in this.
The Rebbe's mamash a general. If not a king, also a king. Also what? Okay, so anyway, going on. The purpose is the soldier. They're the ones that bring the victory, obviously. As we just said, this is why the Jewish people are called the legions of God. We are actually warriors, right? You think you're just like a little yidla over here sitting in a room. You're you're a warrior. That's your actual name as far as Torah's Chaim is concerned. And what Torah calls a thing, that's the essence of the thing. So the Torah calls the Jewish people the legions of God, which means really three things. One of them is soldiers. Another one is like a band of people that each one has to bring out their unique power, or it's not going to happen. And the third meaning of Tzivos Hashem, as we said before, is that you have a limited time to do it. It's like now or never. That's built into the idea of being a warrior, is that there's no time to lose, right? Every second you're in the battle. And you don't have a chance forever to bring out your nitzachon, right? You have your moment. Asher hem osim ratzona shel makom neged esamanagid, v'nagid esamanagid. They are ones who are doing Hashem's will to overcome the opponent. V'hem poschim otzra elyon, and for them will be opened up the treasure house above, bishvil nitzuach hamilchama, in order to win this war. V'nagid esamanagid, which is to overcome this opponent. The opponent is the Yetzer Hara. The opponent is the dark forces in the world. Okay, so now we're going to go. The Mimer really switches gears. That's like sort of the rouse yourself and get pumped up. But this is really what comes next is actually the treasure house. He starts to Pasha teach Chassidus in a very deep way. And what he's explaining is what that treasure house actually is. In other words, it's not nuclear weapons and it's not tanks and planes. What is it, in fact, that Hashem opened up and gave to us in order for us to win this war? And it is Chassidus. And so he starts to explain in the Ofen of Chassidus exactly what the treasure house is. What's the Bechina of Elokus of this treasure house? Very interesting. So he starts in Yud Beis. And basically, till the end of the Mimer, it's a whole different flow of Chassidus. So he says, "Hine lahavin inyana otzer lamaila hu." So to understand what is the treasure house above, and what are we talking about? What is God's secret? It says, Dehine Isa B'tikune Zohar. It says over there, Or Ein Sof L'mayla Adin Kates L'mata Adin Tachlis, that the Or Ein Sof goes infinitely high without end and infinitely low without end. Dehine Masha Omrim L'mata Adin Tachlis. And what does that mean? What's the definite? We're defining the Or Ein Sof, or the Tikkunei Zohar defines the Or Ein Sof as infinitely high and infinitely low. So he says, what does it mean that we say infinitely low? Lamata arin tachlis. Hakavana shagilu v'spashtus. It means that the revelation and expression hu b'chinas Ain Sof ubli gvul klal. It means that Hashem's revelation and His ability to express that revelation goes on forever. In other words, that's two things. The revelation itself is infinite, the quality of it, and the quantity of it, so to speak, the ability for that infinite expression to express itself also goes on forever, as we'll explain. The Zeu Kriya Shem, the Shem or Ein Sof. That's what it means, that it's called the light, which is Ein Sof. It has no end. In other words, it's not just a clever name. It's exactly what it means to say. The Or Atzmo Hu Ein Sof, that the light itself goes on forever. It has no end. And the reason for it is and how is it possible that the light has no end? It's because the light is me'ein hamaor. It's similar to the luminary, to the source of light. In other words, just like every light is similar to the source of light. You can tell the difference between electric light, light of a candle, the light of the sun. The light itself bears a resemblance to the source of the light. So too the Or of the Ein Sof, the light which is a reflection of Ein Sof, is an Or Ein Sof. It therefore is a reflection of Ein Sof itself. The Zehu Inyan Umaylas Ha'or. That's the whole quality of why the light is so great. The Or Imshu Ha'ar Levad, even though light in general cannot compare to the essence, by definition, light is just a ray and a shine of something essential. V'lo etzem, it's not essence. Mikol makom, nevertheless, hinezeu my lasso. But this is the great quality of what the light, which is called the light of the Ein Sof, as opposed to the light of a candle, so to speak. Shume'ein hamaor. In other words, it's reflecting, even though it's just a ray of Ein Sof, and therefore it's reflecting and showing it the Ein Sof, and therefore it itself is Ein Sof. B'liyosha atzmus u'b'chinas pshitos u'b'chinas Ein Sof. Since the essence itself is what we call pashit, right? Which means it's not a compound entity. It's not made up of parts, right? And it is Ein Sof. And at the same time, it doesn't. Ein Sof basically also means pashit, right? If it had some kind of a sof or anything about it had a sof, an end, then it would not be simple and pashit. It would be compound because it would every aspect of it would have some kind of an end. So long as nothing has an end, then it's not limited, right? And if it was a made up of parts, so each part would have some kind of a beginning and an end. So the whole idea is that it doesn't have any things to it. It's something that we don't really have any example of that in this world. It's just something absolute oneness with no implicit divisions and no end. That's the essence of God. L'chein hine gam ha'or, and therefore the light too, which comes out of it, shume'ein ha'ma'or, which is similar therefore to that essence, is b'chinas Ein Sof. It has a level. It has that same quality of Ein Sof, no end. It doesn't have any limitations. V'zeu or Ein Sof shehu atzmo b'chinas Ein Sof, and that's why it's called the light of the Ein Sof, because it itself is Ein Sof. V'nima'or hazeh hayu olamos v'spheros ad ein kates ubli gevul klal. So what happens from this light, since it has no end? It basically creates spheros and worlds that go on without end. In other words, it just shines in every possible manner of theoretical quality that could ever even be thought of or understood, an infinite state. In other words, it's something just so far beyond comprehension that we can't even pretend to think about it. And he says, "Ba'ofani macherim lagamri." In other words, it's not just the 10 spheros that we know about, but just in a higher order and sort of like divested of any materialism. It's much more than that. It's types of spheros and names the spheros that we can't even possibly imagine in totally different ways. In other words, we're basically limited to understanding reality through, this is like sort of, the philosophers even came up with this one, right? That we have certain human body parts and human bodily functions and understandabilities that we're made out of, and therefore we project that understanding onto the entire creation. We can't go out of ourselves to start to describe things which are totally alien and foreign to who we are. Right? So because we understand something that's called intellect, and we have something called vision, and we have feeling, so we can't really escape that boundaries of our own unique description in order to start naming and describing things that are totally beyond those boundaries, because we don't even know what to call them. We have no sensory perception of them whatsoever to even identify them. You follow that?
Like a frog in a well. There's a story. Frog teaches that's just the whole world is like that inside as well.
Okay, yeah. Okay, there you go. It's the frog and the whale, the old frog and the whale. Anyway, the point is, in this level of, why is it like that? Because we're created.
You're like a frog in a well.
We're created from the 10 spheros. Primarily, all the worlds are created from the 10 spheros, and therefore, the worlds in general, as wacky and wild and far out as they can possibly be, they're all going to be some combination or variation of those 10 spheres comprising, themselves. In other words, it's like we have the genome. Let's say we map the entire genome, so you can basically understand that any organism is going to be created from some form or another of a combination of genes. But imagine there was just like a pool of genes that no one ever even thought of or heard of that could create things that we'd never even imagined. Right? So this is what it means, the Ain Sof, in its original expression, which is Ain Sof Mamish, it's spheros ad Ain Sof. It's not 10 spheros, it's infinite number of spheres. Look what is created from just 10 spheros. What seems like an infinite amount of things. But they're not infinite amount of things. They're just all within a certain finite dimension. But spheros ad Ain Kates, which means they're spheres in ways and manners and means that we can't even imagine, because it goes on forever. Anything and everything. That's what it means Ain Sof. I don't know, just saying it over and over again just excites me. I'm sorry. Anyway.
And that's just in Ain Sof? Or like the 10 spheres are how they are now? Or just like many...
The 10 spheres is a step below, is what we're saying. The Ain Sof is a step below. I'm sorry, the 10 spheres is a step below what we're describing right now. The pure Ain Sof, it has no end. It means that it's not just 10 spheres that come from it, it's infinite spheres that come from it, and not just in number but in quality. Things that we cannot imagine, right? Just God's secret. So you'd think maybe that's enough to reveal God's secrets, right? We're talking about opening the treasure house. That's not even it, right? Because what we're describing right now is only the Ain Sof that goes down. That it's lamata mata ad Ain Kates. This is what he's describing. There's an Ain Sof lamayla ad Ain Kates, right? This is lamata ad Ain Tachlis. So, but we're saying even when he starts to go lamata, which means he starts to express himself, it's infinite beyond any possible imagination, like we're saying right now.
It's like a song.
V'hainu sha'olamos v'asfiros gufa hen bli gavu. And what it means is that the worlds that this creates and the spheros that comes from this domain, they are bli gavu, without limit. Levad zeh shem bli gavu misparam, despite the fact that they're infinite in their number of them. Kamaimer v'perushin in spheros ad Ain Kates. Spheros Ain Kates, as we say when it comes to the explanation of spheros Ain Kates, is that the spheros atzman, the number of spheros, hem bli gavu, that there's just an infinite number of them. Levad, he says, what does it mean, spheros Ain Kates? Is that the spheros themselves are infinite. Levad shem b'mispar bli gavu, despite the fact that there are an unlimited number of them. There's also an unlimited quality of them, and just what they are. Each one of them, actually, is something without end. And there's an unending number of them. As it's brought in the Zohar, Kahai Butzina, and now he gives a little bit of a mashal to understand something, how to understand this. Because if you think about the flow of this class, which albeit is not so obvious to see in my flow here, but I make a lot of interruptions. But we just said two things which could be contradictory if you want to get to the details. We said that the Ain Sof is pashut without compound, right? It's not made up of things. It's simple oneness. And then when we said the Or Ein Sof, which comes out of this infinite number of spheros, infinite quality of spheres, that is stuff. Even though there's infinite stuff, but it's stuff. So, and that's what's a reflection of the Atzmus, of the Ein Sof, and we said it's like the Ein Sof. There's a little bit of a funny business going on there. Is it one or is it many? So he explains that in the mashal right now from the Zohar. And he says, Kahai Butzina, like that candle, Dispashit l'chol satar ve'iver, that it spreads out to every side and every corner. V'ka distakel leminda loan. Right, and when you're going to go look at it to know it, right, you're going to look at the candle, like you're seeing that the light of the candle just goes everywhere. There's no place that this light does not reach. Light a candle in a dark room, the whole place is lit up. And when you're going to go look at the source of this light to find out where all this light is coming from, every ray and every corner and every side, lo tishtachach elabutzina bilchudoi. All you'll find is one candle. Right, so this is a deep thing, right? What he's basically saying is that the expression of something simple and uncompounded, when it wants to express itself, it expresses itself in an infinite number of things, right? Because what you're trying to express, now the revelation is an attempt to express it. So when you're going to attempt to express something, you're going to try and come up with things to express it. But since it's the Ein Sof that you're trying to express, you'll come up with every single thing in every possible type of way forever and never end in order to try to express it. Infinite revisions, I don't know if you want to call it revisions or just trying descriptions, in other words, not just in number, but in kind. And that's what the Or Ein Sof is. It's like it's just, when you start thinking about infinity, it's just wacky, right? It doesn't end. Whatever you can possibly imagine and what you can't possibly imagine. Right? And that's the beauty of it. Mamish, what you can't imagine. Because as much as you could sit here for the rest of your life and just imagine everything and anything, remember, that's all within like a 10 sphera box. Because you don't even know what it means to imagine outside of those 10 spheros. And it goes on forever, the number and the kind. So therefore, it's not a contradiction that there's all this stuff and all these kinds, which are a reflection of the Ein Sof, because when you try to describe something simple, you wind up going on forever with descriptions. And that's the Or Ein Sof, lamata ad ein tachlis.
So when you say the lamata ad ein tachlis, that's not Or Ein Sof.
It is. It's part of the Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof is lamayla ad ein kates and lamata ad ein tachlis at the same time.
But this part that's lamayla.
We didn't talk about it yet. Yeah.
The finite and infinite.
But all of it is an expression of Hashem's essence, right?
Wait,
Any other question we had here?
what's that like metaphor that he used?
The candle.
The candle in the room? No.
A candle in a room, yeah, whatever. A candle somewhere, yeah. A candle where the light goes everywhere, and there's and any particular place you're going to look, you're going to find, oh, there's light over here, there's light over there, there's light. Every individual place has light. So you're thinking, what's like the massive, source of light that all this comes from? No, when you go back and look at the source, it's just one simple candle. It's oneness. And because it's oneness at its source, it expresses itself infinitely everywhere else. Because that's how one true oneness expresses itself. If you want to express it, you'll never get to the end of the expressions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like I always tell the story of my father. He tells a story about that when he was in his linguistics class in college, right? And the professor came in, and this is the beginning of the class, kind of a brilliant guy. He's trying to understand the language. He comes in, he holds up a silver spoon. And he doesn't say anything. He just holds up the spoon and he says, "What is this?" That's how the class starts. So someone says, "A spoon." He says, "What is it?" So someone says, "It's an eating utensil. It's a piece of metal. It's a small object." And for an hour, the whole class, they're just describing this thing. And he's like, "No, it's none of those things. It's this. This is it. You can't. It wants you to. It's all those things and none of those things because it's essential. You're going to try to give a description of it. You're just trying to describe a finite aspect of essential thing, which has an infinite description, if theoretically. And that's just a spoon. Imagine the Ein Sof, right? So that's the whole point. Many ultimately is a natural reflection of one. So when we always talk about how is God's one when there's many, seems like a contradiction. The real thinking about this deeply is that the appearance of many is not in any way a contradiction of one. It's the true reflection of pure oneness is an infinite number of many. So God is one and many at the same time is no longer really a challenge when you just have this simple metaphor from the Zohar. It's awesome. Yeah.
So when I look at the human being, which consists of 13 systems, if I'm not mistaken, respiratory system,
Okay.
circulatory system, and I look at one of the systems like this circulatory blood.
Right.
So the blood consists of blood cells, which is all alive, maybe 30 million are created a second, something like that. And I try to imagine, what we talk about the spehros, how they're also a network of systems bridged by, I forget the word. Are they alive also?
Of course they're alive. Of course they're alive. It's life itself.
What's
In other words,
life?
it's not only is it alive, it's that light which makes other things be able to be alive. Right? It's life itself. It's not alive, right? Something which is alive means it's a thing which has life in it. This is life itself. God is Elokim Chaim.
But also like me, like I'm alive, but I consist of
But-
millions and billions of cells, and
Yeah.
they're alive, right?
Yeah.
It's like
But something's enlivening them all of them. Something is giving life to each and every one of them. This is what's giving life to each and every one of them. It's life itself. Right? Because if you, God forbid, a person passes away, all those things are no longer really alive. So the enlivening force is no longer attached to them. Right? So what is the enlivening force? It's the Or Ain Sof itself which comes into contact with them, which brings them to life. Alright, let's go. So he says now, he just translates that kind of clumsy, Aramaic statement into Hebrew. Kaneh razeh, like this candle, asher oro misnotzetz l'chol ever upina, that the light spreads out to every side and every corner. Because tistakel bo ledao, so when you look at it to know it, what is this thing which is everywhere? Lo timtza ela haner bilvad. All you'll find is the one simple candle. And why is that? Because it is what we call simple in essence, i.e. not compound, not made of parts. It's truly one. That is exactly why when you want to see what it is, it comes out into a multiplicity of divisions of levels ad ein shira that go on forever. Something which is kind of simple but has a few parts, like the spoon. You'll run out ultimately of things that describe it, right? Because it doesn't have an infinite way of describing it, because it itself is not totally simple. It's made up of things, of properties, right? Because everything in this world is made up of properties. The only thing that's not made up of properties is God, and so therefore the number of properties which you'll need to describe Him is forever. That's what it means. It spreads out to every single corner and side. But the truth is, it's just one simple candle. That's what it means. There's chad below b'chushban. This is the union of one, but not with a countable one. That's what it means when we talk about in Pasach Eliyahu, that we read Erev Shabbos in the Siddur. We say, "Antu chad below b'chushban." We say, you are one, but not with a countable one. You're not like one of 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're just another type of one. That's what it means. Kamaimer antu chad below b'chushban liyosu b'chinas chad be'etzem. Since you are essentially one. Hine kasher hu babis galus hu velo b'chushban. Therefore, when you come to reveal yourself, you wind up being without calculation. Right? It's just a beautiful little perush if you're a perush kind of a guy there. Antu chad v'lo b'chushban. The simple meaning is, you are one with no calculation. That's what I just described. But he says like this, Antu chad, you are one, and because you are truly one, lo b'chushban. When I try to calculate you, it's incalculatable. It goes on forever. Just a nice little drasha there. Liyosu b'chinas chad be'etzim, yeah. V'hu b'chinas riboy b'yoser. In other words, it winds up making a multiplicity on the greatest scale. Aval misaso hu b'chinas chad mamish. But the truth of the matter is that it's not a contradiction to your simple oneness. Right? This is basically the greatest question of the philosophers. You look in the Alter Rebbe, he says the philosophers, they can never figure out one thing. That basically if God is one, how does many come from one? Right? And they have all kinds of answers they couldn't figure out, that basically this many must be part of Him. It came out of Him, and therefore the many is found in. Everyone agrees the many came from Him. If you're going to put the many back inside of Him, it comes out, He's made of many, He's not one. So you Jews, you can't have it both ways. Either God is one and he's not part of this world, he's like one separate thing, which does not have anything to do with creation, which is what they believe. Or he's one, not like you say, he's one made of things, he's like Mother Nature, which is just like the source of all things. So this is the part that they're missing, right? Is that one true oneness in and of itself demands an infinite number of many. It's the only proper reflection if you want to see what the one is. It's mamish amazing. Aval misasu b'chinas chad mamish v'hinei ma shenetzlu asfiros b'mispar eser. Oh, so let's talk tachlis over here. Don't we talk about the 10 spheros? I mean, where are you getting all these spheros from? Never heard of it before. We always talk about 10 spheros. Kedei b'sefer Yitzir, as it says in Avraham Avinu's book. Eser spheros, eser v'lo teisha, eser v'lo chanesa. Right? He gets very stubborn about it. He's like, there's dafka 10. There's 10 and not 9, there's 10 and not 11. In other words, don't mess around with more than 10. So how does it come out there's infinite, suddenly there's 10? You wind up with 10 when you remove and the infinite, right? In other words, Hashem can do whatever he wants. He's going to stash away all the infinite light. He's going to bring forth something a little bit more handleable. Let's start with 10. You know, maybe you guys can't really get a hold on what we're really talking about here, so I'll put that away for a second. Let's just start with 10. So he puts away everything but 10. Or more cleanly said, he puts away everything and brings back 10. That's actually how it worked. So he says, this is through the tzimtzum shaya ba'or Ein Sof baruch hu. This is through a tzimtzum that took place in the Or Ein Sof. He retracted the light. The al yidei tzimtzum, through this tzimtzum, hari ba ha'or v'agilu b'chinas mida b'gavul. When he made the tzimtzum, he essentially changed the nature of the light. This is already some deep discussion that he doesn't really go into over here, but in short, when he changed the nature of the light when he made the tzimtzum. Why? When the light was there, as we said, it was infinite in quality and quantity, in number and kind, right? But when he all of a sudden pulled it back, he revealed some other power, which is a whole nother awesomeness of God, which is the power of limitation. Up until that time, all we saw was the power of infinite. What is the essence? An infinite number of revelations of things. So that's the essence showing itself off in the fact that it's infinite. But when he made the tzimtzum, he pulled back the light, the essence showed another power that it has. The power to be not infinite, the power to be finite, to remove the infinity and create a sense of boundary. So all of a sudden you have nothing, and that's also a representation of the essence. It's not like nothing is really nothing. It's an expression of finiteness. And now, when the light comes back, it makes a little dance with the finiteness. They make friends, and now you have a new thing called a limited type of light. Up until that point, you only had something called infinite light. But now that the light comes into contact with the power of finite in the Ein Sof, you now have something called limited light, a chiddush, and that's called the 10 spheros.
Unlimited infinity?
Limited infinity.
You can take it and break it down into as many
10.
fractions as
Into
you
10.
want.
You know, that's the limitation. What do you mean? It's infinite light, but it's 10 lights.
But you can break those down.
You can break those down, but already
The world's
those you can break down infinitely, as he's going to say in a minute, and that's because it's still infinite light. You know, the stuff that you're working with is still infinite, and therefore from the 10 spheros, you never get to the end of those either. That also goes on forever. But it goes on forever within the context and the confines of this sort of the frog and the whale, right?
Well, how does infinite and finite make this make the sphere?
Because it makes the 10 spheros, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because once the infinite light comes back, it's now coming back against resistance. Before it came out, there was nothing else but it. But once Hashem made the tzimtzum, the darkness is a thing itself, right? It's not just like the absence of light. It's the presence of the tzimtzum. So when the light now comes back, he's got someone else in the picture he never met before, called Mr. Tzimtzum, right? And so when he now wants to shine himself, he's now shining himself through the filter of Mr. Tzimtzum, and that creates a different type of light. It creates 10 spheros of light, which is something we've never seen before. All we knew before was infinite spheros, infinite in kind and infinite in number. Now we have 10 spheros because he met Mr. Tzimtzum. Yeah.
Before the lights go into Atzilus, the aspect of the light, could you call not light spheres, or it's still light, it's just that it's contracted light?
When you what do you mean? When it goes into the kelim of Atzilus, you mean?
Yeah, that's
Bichlal, we're not even talking about Atzilus here. We're talking about the kav,
yeah.
which precedes Atzilus. And yes, there's already 10 spheres of light that have nothing to do with the 10 spheres of kelim. Yeah.
So even in the light there's spheres, not only in the
Yes. Yeah. Look, we said before, in the light there was infinite spheros, and there infinite ophanim of types of manners of spheros. So yes, there's for sure. That's a bit of machloikis, by the way. The Ramak says one thing, the Ari says another thing. Hasidus, sort of the Rebbe Rashab sort of goes on a whole 1,000-long page, rectification that according to him, yes, there's lights in spheros. Some people want to say that spheros, that light is without spheros, and the spheros are only initiated by the vessels. That's where spheros are, and the simple light just sort of drips itself into vessels, sort of like water going into different colored cups. That the water ultimately never doesn't have any. It's all the same exact water, simple, clear. It's just the cup that gives its definition. But the Rebbe Rashab basically says that that's not the ultimate tachlis of truth. There is something called spheros of light, right? That there's an implicit division of finiteness in the light itself before they even hit the spheros. It's just that until they hit the spheros, they don't express the would-be distinctions, but they're in there. So the sphero does sort of put the revelation of uniqueness on each quality of light. When it's all just light, it's like take for example a white light before it goes to a prism. It actually has in there green, blue, yellow. It's in there. It's just you can't see it until it goes to the prism. Same is with the spheros of light. Yes, there are spheros of light. Just what? Since there's nothing to sort of differentiate them because they're within light, they're just in potential. And when they hit the spheros, that's when you actually can see the differentiation. But it's not the sphere that makes the differentiation. It's the sphere that reveals the differentiation. Is that clear?
Because we spoke about it once, how the kelim are
Crystal clear.
we spoke about this, how the kelim are like there's another substance from Atzmos.
Yes, that's right.
So I was just trying to understand if this light has all these spheres, then why is that?
Because that's because of the reason I just said.
Yeah, so
They're
that
not
makes sense.
differentiated yet.
Yeah.
And it's the vessels which actually allow the light to reveal itself. What's the point of vessels? To reveal light ultimately. So the would-be 10 spheros inside the light can't really show themselves unless they come into Mr. Tzimtzum again, right? Which gives them a finite way of expressing themselves. Just like we just said now, that in general the Tzimtzum creates 10 spheros as opposed to infinite spheros of light. But the truth of the matter is that until the Mr. Tzimtzum's children are born, which are vessels, then even those 10 spheres of light do not actually get to show themselves yet until the grandchildren come and meet, and they have mamish light in vessel, and it's literally finite.
So that's what we talked about, like the lights of the Ak. The light has like 10 hidden spheres in them.
Yes.
Like let's say 10 colors.
Yeah.
But there's no vessel for
That's
them.
right.
It's not like the infinite amount of colors. Let's say.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And since there's no real vessels there's no real differentiation between any of the lights, meaningfully, only in theory, right? There is some kind of vague vessel even in Ak, but not enough to make it so that it's what you have what's called an or panimi, that light goes inside of something else. It's just it maybe can differentiate the light to itself, but it can't actually surround the light like it does in Atzilus. And we're getting very technical here, I apologize about that. But it's all good. So, 2 more minutes, let's see if we can wrap it up here. So what happens is that the infinite number of lights of the Ain Sof gets contracted, and the response is that you now have 10 spheros. And this is what it means in the Sefer Yitzir, where it says there's 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11.
I have a question.
1 second. And so what we're saying there is that Al Yidei Atzimtzum, that's where we left off, right? 5 lines down the end of the line, page 133. Al Yidei Atzimtzum, Hareba Or Bagil B'chinas Mida B'Gavul. The light now comes to a state of limitation, i.e. there's 10. L'chein hem mispar eser spheres. That's why there's suddenly 10 spheros. Ubekol zeh, nonetheless, and this is a point that we left off on. Hine achra tzimtzum nishavu mekol makom olamos bli gavul ubli shiur. Even after this tzimtzum and a creation of 10 spheros, you still come into existence from those 10 spheros, infinite worlds without number. It's just like we said, they're like the frog and the whale. They're all now within the context of these 10 spheros, but there's not an end to the number of worlds.
But what about the spheros? No.
There's 10 spheros which produce an infinite number of worlds.
Okay.
Just like you could have, for example, 22 letters, 22 finite entities, but you can combine them in ways that can make infinite languages and infinite words in infinite languages. Like, even though you're starting with something finite, the expression of that can go on forever. Kamosha Kasuv, almost Ain Mispar, as it says in Tanakh, that there's an unlimited amount of maidens, and the sages said, don't read it almost maidens, but olamos, read it, there's worlds, there's an infinite amount of worlds. Olamos bli shir mispar klal, the worlds go on forever. There's not just Asiya, Yitzira, Bri, and Atzilus, right? That's like a joke, 4 worlds. There's no number of worlds. Why do we call them the 4 worlds? Because in general, we take this infinite thing and we sort of give it like 4 categories so we can even begin to discuss it. Which is kind of like the Yud K Vav K, right? Havaya, Hashem's name means past, present, and future at one. Basically the undescribable. But we're like, you know what? Let's break it down. There's the Yud of the Hava of the undescribable, there's the Hey of the undescribable, there's the Vav, and there's the other Hey. It's like you can break down something infinite and just try and throw like a little science onto it so you can at least discuss it rationally. Somewhat. Get the Isa be'Edra Rabba, as it says, be'Gulgalta Yasvei Tresar Alfei Almin. It says in the Gulgalta alone, which is like some random part of the skull of God, so to speak, it says there's 12,000 worlds. And the number of this number of 12,000 worlds, Hurak Lafi Indian Shemadav or something, it's just talking about Bechlal, one little part of Hashem's skull, so to speak. It's not saying there's 12,000 worlds. It's saying in that little region, there's 12,000 worlds over there. That over there is this number. In truth, there's an infinite number of things. Worlds. To the point that the very lowest level of the level called Atzilus, which is called Malchus of Atzilus, as we know, what does Malchus of Atzilus create? Malchus creates Bria, right, which is the creation. And the creation itself goes on forever. So he's just, in other words, what he's saying is from the 10 spheros, that's already godly light, which is beyond creation. And that creates infinite worlds, which are beyond creation. If you take the lowest of the lowest levels of all of that infinite light, which is beyond creation, it's called Malchus of Atzilus, that becomes the progenitor of a creation, which itself is infinite, has no end. As we say in the davening every day, how wondrous are your deeds, how great are your deeds, meaning your deeds in the physical creation, even the physical creation. This is the Bria and the spiritual creation. But even the physical creation goes on forever. There's no end of things. You can keep on. They had once a science called determinism, positivism. They used to think, let's count everything, and then we'll know what we were holding. And they came to realize quickly, you can't count everything. It goes on forever. This represents the massive number of creations and the size of creations and the quality of them. As it says, Divra Maskil Vayera, the kol zehu lefisha or hu Ain Sof hu bli gavul. So now coming back to our point, what does it mean that or Ain Sof is lamayla aden kates v'lamata mata aden tachlis? It goes infinitely low. Is that this light which is shining, which is called the infinitely low light, mind you, it goes on forever low. That's what it means. No matter how far you're going to go, it's going to be able to express itself at infinite levels. No matter where you find yourself, even here in the physical world, you'll find a hint and a presence of an infinite light, because even in the physical dimension, it's uncountable. So the Or Ain Sof, which has no end, no matter where you go, you're going to find that it has no end. You're going to find an unending array of things and kinds of things, no matter what dimension you enter into, no matter what like you just sort of said before, there's 13 systems in the human body, but you have to go into and sort of investigate any system, you realize it goes on forever. How many infinite cells are coming out, and what's going on inside of those cells? Crazy. And that's all what that is the presence of the mamish, the or Ein Sof. If you trace it back to its root, it's because it's shining from the essence of Hashem, which cannot be sufficiently described. So it goes on forever. And it goes on forever everywhere. That's what it means, it goes infinitely low. Therefore, even after it contracts itself, and it's like, okay, let's start with 10 and see if we can stop ourselves from being infinite. Nope, because it's essentially based up of infinity, even when you're going to limit it to 10, it comes out to infinite, comes out of there. Whatever happens from that 10 is going to be infinite and without number. End of the class. Okay, woo!
So we get almost. I'm like, the terrorists, you got it backwards here. You're like, oh, you're getting almost.
Right.
So, you brought this down about that concept of the 10 spheres.
He wrote in Sefer Yetzirah, yeah.
So, how did he come up with that? Is it coming from somewhere, or did he, through his, whatever, his clearness, whatever, he get it, or did he get it from before him?
It did exist before him.
It had to, but where did he receive it from?
But the idea of revealing it means that obviously he had some special,
definitely.
Power to articulate what no one else had. But certainly the concept existed before him. Because he wasn't inventing it; he was describing something that was. So obviously he didn't make it up, but he was the first one to express it.
So, okay. So God bestows upon me this little taste of